Welcome, brothers. This is George Stump, Financial Officer Trainer. This presentation is for financial secretaries, treasurers, and trustees of your council. Thanks for volunteering and coming to this workshop. If you're new to your position, you'll get a lot of information to get you started. If you're experienced in your position and regularly achieve successful audits and have great financial controls, I hope you will still get ideas to help you be even better. Here's the agenda for the presentation. We'll have an overview of the financial processes and controls, the handling of funds and funds management, the semi-annual audit, 1295, online member transfers, something new that came within the last few months, transferring e-members into your council. The candidate info, which was just introduced a couple of weeks ago, that's entering your new candidates, transfers, and reactivations into member management. And then help, where you can go for help if you need it. The overview of the basics. We have the roles and responsibilities of the officers. All too often, new officers start their jobs without understanding their roles and responsibilities. They don't understand the importance of the rigor that we have to have in a segregation of duties and responsibilities. And we'll go through these in the next few slides, and you can review them now, and then you can go over them later if you want. So we have the checks and balances and working as a team, which is very important. Roles and responsibilities. These are the main officers in the processes. The financial secretary, who maintains all the financial and management records, uses member management software. And actually the FS is the only one that has full access to member management. The Grand Knight has some access to it, but the FS is the only one that has full access. The FS also records membership in financial transactions and handles most of the money, but not the bank account. The treasurer manages all the council funds and bank accounts, handles the checkbook and all the bank transactions. He's the owner of the bank accounts, gets the money in and out of the bank, writes through checks and through cash, and then provides bank records to the Grand Knight, the district deputy, and the trustees. The trustees, they oversee the audit, which is the 1295, and actually conduct the audit. And it also suggests that the trustees have a job of serving on the retention committee for membership. Why is financial management so important? This should be self-evident to all of us. Obviously, the managing of funds, you have to do that like you have a small business, like your home budget or your home money that you spend during the month. You have to have control of what you're doing there. Tax accounting, this is just like a small business. As you know, we have taxes that have to be filed every year through a 990 report. Very important for us to do that so that we don't lose our status to the IRS as a nonprofit. And also to avoid any misappropriation of funds, to catch any mistakes that are made before they get too far. So you avoid any misappropriation of funds. Checks and balances, why is it necessary? Well, everyone makes mistakes. We're all human, so obviously you don't want to have money being missing or not know where money are, or money is rather. So, you know, everyone makes mistakes. So we want to make sure that we catch those. And that's why we have the segregation that we do, and we'll see that in later slides, about different roles and responsibilities that each of our officers has. Here's we have to show how we operate as a team. Teamwork is different responsibilities for each person. The financial secretary controls member management, records, and gets all funds from the council. So the financial secretary is the one that should be receiving all the funds. The treasurer then puts in and takes out money from the bank account through checks and cash. And the trustees, they have oversight over both of those operations to ensure that both sets of records are in sync. And we'll talk a lot about that too at later slides. Funds management's the basics, pretty basic stuff here. We got the receipts, which are the checks and cash coming in to the council. Disbursements, which are the cash and checks, which are being paid out from the council. The monthly reconciliation, between the financial secretary and the treasurer. Very important that this be done monthly, and we'll discuss this a little bit too later. And this is similar, of course, to balancing your own checkbook. As we know, the financial secretary will have the records, and everything comes from the financial secretary to the treasurer, so they should balance and not wait until they get to the audit before they see that that is true. Budgets, we'll talk a little bit about a budget and why it's important to have a budget, what it does, and what benefit it has to the council. And then the bonding. The treasurer and the financial secretary are both bonded by Supreme for $5,000. And then if your council would need any extra insurance because it has high value funds in there, they're available to purchase extra insurance from Supreme for $7 for each $1,000 extra that you need over the $5,000. Here's a process chart that shows a little bit about the incoming funds. It's very simple. So you could see the financial secretary is the one who receives the cash. I know this may not always be true in the councils, but that's the way it's supposed to be done. You're not supposed to have the cash going directly to the treasurer. This is part of, again, the responsibilities to make sure that funds are in sync with between the secretary and the treasurer, and the oversight of the funds themselves. So the financial secretary takes the cash and gives it to the treasurer. Treasurer then verifies what cash he's received and signs a receipt. And then financial secretary retains a copy of that receipt, and so does the treasurer. So there's 2 copies of that receipt, and both of them keep a copy. And then the treasurer deposits the cash into the bank. Above there in the slide next to the title, you see a sample which I made up of what a receipt looks like when it's entered into member management. Comes out very clean. You can do this during the month from one meeting to the next if that's when most of your deposits take place. And you just accumulate those and input them into member management, and then run a monthly total. And it actually picks up the name of the financial secretary and the name of the treasurer, and it has a place for both of them to sign. So what I usually do is run 2 copies of this, and then I sign both of them. And when the treasurer verifies the money that I've given them, he signs a copy and gives it back to me, and then he retains one for himself. Next, we have the outgoing funds. Again, very simple here. Financial secretary receives a request or a bill, and for a reimbursement or payment of a bill, it's approved by the council if not budgeted. Financial secretary then prepares and signs a voucher. The trustees examine the voucher. Council approves the paying of the bills. The voucher is then signed by the Grand Knight. Now, I had some questions about the Grand Knight approving it. Actually, what the Grand Knight's responsibility as far as his signature is concerned here is that he has overseen all the processes that have taken place and verifies that the proper process to spend that money was taken. And then the treasurer writes the check and then records it as a disbursement. Again, I've put a simple copy of a voucher register that when entered into member management, these are done between the meetings, and you can run a copy of all of them all at once on one paper instead of having separate paper vouchers like we used to have. Member management facilitates it, so it's all on one piece of paper, or a couple of sides of paper, I should say. And then again, it puts the proper approval names at the bottom of the page as the financial secretary's and his approval, the Grand Knight, his approval, and then the treasurer and his approval. And then usually what you can do as far as the trustees is have them just initial that they have seen the bills and have approved all the backup that goes with those bills to verify that those are the expenses that should be approved by the council. Here's the important part, of course, is the monthly reconciliation. We talked about this before. At the end of the month, the treasurer should be receiving a bank statement, takes that bank statement, adds any interest to it, if there is interest-bearing checking, and to his journal. Any other changes, if there's any bank charges, anything like that that came with the billing or with the statement itself, enter those in, takes off the cleared checks and puts the balance in there. Make sure that that there's nothing missing in the transaction, and then actually takes the balance and makes sure that that's what the bank has told them is the balance in the account. That's the important thing here is all the other backup that we have. The real meat of this is that the bank itself, the bank statement itself, is in harmony with what the treasurer and the financial secretary have in their books. So this is what the important part that has to be done each month. Here's just kind of I know it's very small, but just a little bit about a budget. I don't know how many of you may be keeping a budget. It's really very important, and actually it helps to facilitate timely payments and get those checks to where they need to go in a quicker way. So the purpose of the budget is for actually a pre-approval of expenses. So what you can do, and what this does here is it shows a proposed budget and an actual, and then and for a year or two ahead of time, or back, I should say, a year or two previous to the year that you're in right now. So you can go back and accumulate in general categories what your expenses usually are and what your income usually is for the year. And then as that is historical data, show that on this, and then put in what you foresee to be the expenses for the current year. And then what the proposed would be for the current year. And then that could be presented at a meeting as a resolution. And then that should be given to the members to take a look at, see if they have any questions, whatever. And then it needs to be a publication of some sort, but not the budget itself, to say that you're going to vote on a budget. If there's any questions, people can come to the next meeting and you would address those questions as a financial secretary. So once that's done, then it's voted on and approved by the members. And then you have this budget that you can go by. Now, what this will do then, it details money that's going to be spent for the year. Now, it doesn't have to be exact amounts. What you're doing here is setting up kind of historical data. So what would happen then is, when we have spending to come up, instead of having to publish it again and get it and go to meetings, sometimes these things come up. You would have it, if you have it in the budget, it's considered to have been approved. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't need to read those expenses to your council. All money that's dispersed should be read to the council at the meeting. So but this budget will help facilitate those bills that you have, or those motions that you may have from other years that would indicate where you want to spend this money. But all the disbursements then are pre-approved to the budget, and all disbursements and items that are not in the budget, though, do need to be approved by a council and take longer to get approved. And budgets are key for minimizing efforts of expending payments. So this helps you to keep stable in your expenses too, so that people aren't bringing up motions and things to spend all this extra money that isn't in the budget, and then you find yourself in financial problems at the end of the year. So this helps with the stability of your council's expenses too. Now we'll get into the semi-annual audit. Pretty much we'll just go over the overview, preparation, three main parts of it, and then the post-audit tasks that you have. When is the audit? The audit is due twice a year. One is due on August 15th, and that covers the period January through June. And then the one that is due February 15th is covering the period of July through December. Who should have responsibility in the audit? The Grand Knight has overall responsibility for all that's going on in the audit. Financial secretary is the person who receives and distributes the funds. Of course, as we talked about, the treasurer maintains the bank account. Trustees oversee all the business of the council. Any others that you can have at your audit would be a deputy Grand Knight, so that they can learn, and when they take over the position, they'll know what to expect. The recorder, meeting minutes and action items. You might have the book that you have of your minutes at the meeting, because some things that weren't in the budget were approved at the meetings. If the trustees want to see where that was approved, you have the meeting notes to show, okay, on April the 7th, we had a motion to spend this much money for this particular thing. It was approved. a motion was made by so-and-so, approved by so-and-so, and voted on unanimously to spend that money. And then a DD can ensure the process of the fund. The DD doesn't have necessarily have to be at the audit, but at least he should have some oversight of it as it's going on or after the audit itself. Audit preparation prior to the meeting. The financial secretary should not hold on to any monies that they have at the end of those periods. So the period of January through June, as of June 30th, the financial secretary should make sure that most of the money, if not all of it actually, has already been given over to the treasurer so that it's been deposited in the bank. And as of the meeting, or as of the audit, as of July through December 31st, again, the financial secretary should make sure that all of the money that he has is handed over to the treasurer for deposit. The financial secretary and the treasurer turn over all this information to the trustees, the voucher, the checkbook, check registry, bank statements, and the trustees themselves are the ones who need to fill out the 1295, the audit report. This is not to be done by the financial secretary. And the trustees then schedule an audit review meeting. So we'll go through the lines here on the audit, try to be as brief as I can, but also clear that we know what goes on these lines. So we look at the first line here and we see it says cash on hand at the beginning of the period. This is the financial secretary section. This is the part that would be filled out by the trustees based on the financial secretary's records. So cash on hand at the beginning of the period, that would be the number that was on the previous audit on the final line there. It says cash on hand at the end of the period. So if, for instance, there was a check that came into the financial secretary at the end of the month, say on the 29th or 30th, and he didn't have a chance to get it over to the financial secretary or to the treasurer, then that would be considered cash on hand at the end of the period. So if there was anything that was on the last audit report that was on hand at the end of the period, that needs to go into the top line. And the next line is talking about cash received for dues and initiations. That's pretty clear. Also, the next line is cash received from other sources. Now, there's only 3 lines that are on the audit right now. So what you can do, this is a pretty discretionary, but take your top category of the money you raise. Say that your golf outing, say you have a golf outing and that's your major source of income for that 6-month period, or pancake breakfast or whatever. Then you can make that your top category and put the money that you've received for that particular function on the top line. And then the second line would be the next highest amount you raised. And then all the other money you have, which excludes, of course, the dues and initiations in those first 2 lines that you took the top categories, and all the rest of that money goes in there. And then that would come down to the total cash received for that period. The next line then would be, and this would be what you would have recorded as the financial secretary that you've received. The next line is the amount that you transferred to the secretary. So, or to the treasurer, excuse me. So if you had turned over to the treasurer all the money that you had received, then those 2 lines would be the same. If for some reason you did not have a chance to get the treasurer a certain amount of, or small amount of money that you received near the end of the month, that is where you'd have that number slightly smaller that transferred to the treasurer, and then of course the difference would go on the cash on hand. But for most of us, the transfer to the treasurer line would be the same as the cash received line. So that would be the section for the financial secretary's records. The next section would be the treasurer's transactions. So here again, the trustees would get the check registry and cash on hand at the beginning of the period. Now this is very important and it seems fairly obvious, but there are some audits that come in that are not balanced correctly here. So the cash on hand at the beginning of the period must be the number that was on the last line that you see here, net balance on hand at the end of the last period. So you would take, so very simply, when you did the June audit, whatever balance was on hand as of June 30th, and now you're doing the July through December, that number would be the line that is on the top that says cash on hand at the beginning of the period. So you would just copy that number from your last audit. Received from the financial secretary, that would match the line that you have on the other side from the financial secretary's records. So that should be shown as the receipts that we talked about recently that are generated from the cash that's being handed over to the treasurer, and the treasurer and financial secretary both agree. So the accumulation of those for that 6-month period should be what you have in there received from the financial secretary. We have any transfers from savings and other accounts. So if you have any investment accounts or savings accounts, don't forget, this is from the checkbook now. So any savings accounts or other money market accounts, anything that you would cash in and transfer over to your council checking account would be put on this line. Any interest earned from the bank records we talked about before, anything that's on bank statements where you receive any interest from the money that you have, you would then put that in that line right there. And then the total cash received. Total cash received then would be the amount of received from financial secretary, transfers from savings accounts, interest earned. That would give you your cash received for the period. Next is the disbursements. This should match the disbursement section of the treasurer's cash book. Again, the cash book is part of the audit. So we would take, first of all, any per capitas that were paid to the Supreme Council and then to the State Council. So those monies will be put in that line. The general council expenses are anything that would be any monies that were expended, dispersed to run your council. Next is the transfer to savings and other accounts. So if you have accumulated some funds that you want to take out and put into some other account, a investment account or a savings account, in order so you can get interest on it, that transfer out of your checking account into another account will go on this line. Then miscellaneous is all the other disbursements that you have that didn't fit in one of those other categories. Again, there's a total disbursement line. You would add up the per capita from Supreme, State, general expenses, transfers, miscellaneous, and that would give you your total disbursements. Then your net balance then would be your first line, your cash on hand at the beginning of the period, the total cash received, and then minus the total disbursements. So cash on hand at the beginning of the period plus cash received less disbursements will give you your net balance on hand at the end of the period. The bottom section then talks about assets. Cash, in this particular case, says undeposited funds. So that would be any funds that the treasurer may have that were not deposited in the bank. Or if there are also any funds that would be in the financial secretary's possession that he did not give to the treasurer as during that period to deposit. The first line then after that, checking account, that line should be the same as what was on the previous slide that we had that said net balance at the end of the period. That should be what goes into your checking account line there. So those two numbers need to agree. If you have a savings account, then that would go on that line. Any money market accounts, that would go on that line. The next line, due from members. So when we had the June audit, period ending June 30th audit, any members that owe dues for when we do have it, anybody that owes dues for the 2020 year, that number would go in there. So in June, when you do the audit this year, anybody that still has not paid their dues, you put that, how many members it is, and how much money is owed by those members. It does not include anybody from a previous year. Previous years that are not paid are considered forgiven by Supreme. Again, the total, that would then, we have a total assets, that would be the accumulation of those lines which we just talked about, undeposited cash, bank, and members that owe dues. Less the current liabilities, which we can get over, I'll show you that slide next. and that'll equal your current net assets. And then any other assets you have, short-term CDs, money market accounts, miscellaneous assets. If you own any equipment, say you have a computer or something that you own, that the council owns, that has a value, that number would go in there. And then you have your total other assets, and then your total assets altogether. On the other side is your liabilities, and there you have due Supreme Council. Now what this is, sometimes this is mistaken that, for instance, when we get our per capita bill from Supreme twice a year. So let's say we had the one in December, and we get the bill January 1st, and you have that bill. This of course, this audit is not due until February 15th. So the fact is that the Supreme Council billings are actually dated in January of 2020 from there. So anything that you did as of December, that would not be included in that bill, because that bill is not due in December. It is a bill that is due in the next month. Same thing as happens in June. The bill is dated in July. So when you do your audit in June, you do not put anything in the Supreme Council due line, because that bill is not due until July. And there you have the per capita, supplies, Catholic advertising. Those are the things that come in on the Supreme bill. So those, like I say, those are not overdue if they're the month that they're due is the one after the audit is dated. And then the state council is the same way. So you get the state per capita. The one you get in July when you do your audit does not affect the June 30th audit period. Advance payment by members. If you have someone that paid ahead of time, I know it's probably very far and in between. Sometimes it's tough getting the current year without having people paying the advancement. But if you have a member who pays ahead of time, that money would go in there, and the number of members that did that. And then your miscellaneous liabilities, if you have any bills or anything that weren't paid at the time, those would be put in that line. So that would be your total current liabilities. So going back one slide, you can see the line in the middle there, it says less current liabilities. So whatever that number was on this slide here for total current liabilities would go on that line, and that would be a subtraction from your assets. So really what this is trying to do is saying, what is your council's net worth? That's really what we're trying to establish here. So post-audit tasks assigned by the Grand Knight and 2 or 3 of the trustees. If all 3 trustees are there, of course they should sign this. But if you don't, you need a minimum of 2 trustees to sign this audit. Council copies. All are in attendance are invited. That are invited should get a copy of it. And then you need to send other copies to Supreme, and those could be done through email, of course, the state, and the district deputy. The district deputies are also supposed to periodically spot check the council's financials and provide him with information that's requested in case he wants to see any of the records that were done to accomplish the audit. Now here's a new function that this was a recent addition to the task that can be accomplished within member management application, and that being the transfer of e-members into your council. As you know, we've been very active in our state with e-membership. So this is a way of you taking care of this in member management instead of having to send this information to Supreme. So after you sign into Officers Online, you can scroll down the page and you will see these tabs. And the tab that is marked Prospect is the one you want to hit. Now this can be done by either the Financial Secretary or the Grand Knight. Now once you click on that tab, this is what you will see. Either if you have someone assigned. If you don't have any assigned, it's going to say there's no assignments. If you have somebody that is looking to transfer to your council from e-membership, you'll see this kind of information. The council will be there, the assignment date, the name, membership number, and date of entry. So if you click on assign, you'll see this information for any e-member that have said that they want to convert to your council. But it can also include members that are assigned to your council by the state. An e-member does not specify the council that he's interested in joining. The state will look up the prospect's address and try to place them in council that's nearest to where they are. Here's the information that will appear. So the process, you would take the place, or be taken from the Form 100. So once you use the Form 100, you would obtain the approval from your admissions committee like you would any other member that's going to join your council. And once you get the permission or the approval of your admissions committee and the approval of the membership or the prospect have exemplification of charity, then you need to schedule that person for the exemplification of charity, unity, and fraternity. When that particular ceremony has been attended by the prospect, then what you would do is put in the exemplification date that you can see there. It's just a date that you would put in for the date that their exemplification was, and then you would hit the transfer button. If for some reason through the approval process the member is rejected, then obviously you wouldn't have them go through the exemplification. You would hit the reject button, and then that information would be taken off the screen, and that member would not appear on your prospects tab any longer. And once you press the tab that says transfer that I talked about here, then you would get a notification on your screen that the transfer member to your has been successful and sent to Supreme Council. So the member will automatically be transferred into your council. You will not need to submit a Form 100. You just keep it for your own records, and the member will no longer appear in the prospect tab, of course. Then your council will receive a +1 membership quota credit. So now all the information that was entered from the e-membership would then appear in your roster as one of the members of your council. Next, we'll address the latest additional functionality in Officers Online, and that is the ability to add new candidates or transfer members or reactivate members online. This process can be completed by the Grand Knight or the Financial Secretary. So after you sign in to member management, Officers Online, you scroll down the page and you will see a tab titled Candidates. So right next to where we talked about the prospect tag, you would now see a candidate tab. So click on that candidate tab, and you will see if there is anybody that's already in there, you will see their name. Otherwise, this will be blank, but you'll be able to add information, and I'll show you that. So if you have someone you want to add, if you've got a new Form 100 now, someone who wants to join your council, you would click on the Add tab here. When you do that, you're going to receive a pop-up box that says Membership Form. And this form has to be completed with the information that you received from the Form 100. So this tab this form will have all the information that you need to fill in that is on the Form 100. It's a couple of pages down. You have to page down and fill in all the information. And once that information is in, you would press the Save button. Once you do that, the candidate's name will then appear with the information. As you can see here, we had one name in there now. The second name that we've entered appears in there with the information that we've already put in. Now, will update the pending member section. So if you need to make any changes now, say something changed or you entered some information incorrectly, all you need to do is click on that name, click on the name itself, and new information will appear on the screen, or the information will appear on the screen that you had from the box before. And you just go and enter any new information, and then click the Save tab again. It'll tell you that the information has been saved and verify the information. If you click on the information icon next to the name, the date of birth and the phone number will appear. So as you can see, there's a little tab there with a hand on it. If you click on that little I information tab, at the top of the page, then you will see the person's date of birth and his phone number. Now, what you need to do then, if you need to take the Form 100, and it must be presented to your membership committee and membership for approval, same as it would be before. For new members, schedule them for an exemplification of charity, unity, and fraternity. Once the new member has attended the ceremony, what you need to do then is to enter the ceremonial date and click on the process button. So all you need to do there is to, where you see the information there, ceremonial process date, just enter the date that the person went through the ceremony of exemplification. Once you do that, you press the process button. Now for transferring or reactivating members, say you have somebody that's being transferred to your council, you would do the same thing. You would get approval from the membership committee and the membership to accept him into your council. And you would also then just enter that information and press the process button. If there was some reason in either one of those cases, the person is not approved, then you would press the delete, and that person would, that information would be taken off the screen. Same thing with anybody that's being reactivated. You can also enter their information in and press the process button upon their acceptance into your council. Once you do that, once you process it, you'll get a notification. The information was processed. A confirmation box will appear to verify that the information was sent to Supreme Council. The member will receive an automated email message from your Grand Knight. It will have his name on the automated email address. Then you retain the Form 100 for your council records, and there's no need to submit the Form 100 to Supreme. This is a great enhancement to the process because you no longer have to be dependent upon Supreme to update your council records or to check the accuracy of the information. Once you do that, that person will appear on your roster, and all the information that you entered will be there also. So here's a summary of the candidate information tab. For new, reactivated, and transferred members, enter all the data from the Form 100. Enter the ceremonial process date after the council approval. Process the entry after ceremonial date to Supreme. The member will then receive an automated email from the Grand Knight. No Form 100 needs to be sent to Supreme, and retain the Form 100 for council records. Here's where we can go for help. We talked about the fact that you're not out there alone. There's all kinds of training material, state leadership guides, whatever, that you can get help from. You can look the answer up itself in some of these guides. Council officers and past Grand Knights, they can maybe will help you, your district deputy. Your officers online training and desk reference tabs. Back when you sign into the online member management system, you'll see there are tabs also for training and desk reference. The training has different training modules which you can go in and learn about your position. They're very specific to the positions that you have. There is one for financial secretaries and Grand Knights. And then there's a desk reference, which is very good. Our state advocate always tells people before you call to check the desk reference. It has a tremendous amount of information about all different aspects of your council, things that are allowed and not allowed, how to handle funds. It just is a great source of information that you can use to help you make decisions with your council. State personnel, we have all the directors in the state that can help you out with whatever you need to do. Certainly, you can always get in touch with me if you have a problem. And then the publications, I put down some of the publications here that are pretty important. The first one there, publication 30, that is the Charter, Constitution, and Laws of the Order. That is a supreme publication, and that has a section for the councils, which is very useful in answering many questions. And several of them cover the processes that we just talked about with financial controls. There's also these other ones. There are the leadership guide, and the other ones are specific to financial secretary, the 5093 and 10238. You can actually get those by going into the Supreme website, and actually in the box that's up at the top for searching, if you just put those numbers in there, it will bring up some links that you can get to see those publications. So you can order them if you want hard copies. You can just put them into to the online system through the supplies online and receive copies of those. Some of them are free, but mostly very, very low cost, but they're very helpful in outlining several of the things that we just went over as far as the audits are concerned, what the responsibilities of the officers are. Those are very helpful aids to help you with your job. So as an overview here, this just tells you some of the things that we've covered during the day today. We've talked about the money process, semi-annual audit, the online transfer of members for e-membership, the new candidate information tab, and where to go for help. So these are some of the best practices that you can try. Get yourself as many people to help you as you can. We are here to help you whenever you need it. Work with your financial secretary and your trustees and the treasurer, all being a team together. That's very important. And most important of all, if your council is financially secure and you're able to respond, you need to be able to respond to the charities that are being done, your charitable projects in your parishes and communities, which is the mission of your council. So that should do it for now. Thank you very much for watching this presentation, and Viva Jesus.